Hi, listeners. I'm Colleen Dieter, landscape consultant and certified arborist at ATXGardens.com. Welcome to the ATX Gardens Podcast, where every other week I share simple, timely tips for what to do in your Central Texas garden right now. If you're watching on YouTube, tap like and subscribe for more gardening help. Hey there, gardening friends. Today I'm talking about what to do in the first half of January so your Central Texas garden stays healthy all winter long. This episode is sponsored by ATXGardens.com, my landscape consulting business. So let's jump in. Keep watching the weather forecast for freezes and be ready to move or cover tender tropicals and other plants that are not cold hardy. For more information about protecting plants from freezes and which plants need protecting, listen to my past episodes from November and December from 2025. Be on the lookout for winter weeds that are sprouting now. Like I said in the last episode, the key to success with winter weeds is identifying the seedlings and learning what they look like when they're small. So listen to the last episode for more details. One weed to look for at this time of year is called hedge parsley. The botanical name is Torillus arvensis. Another common name for this weed is the tall sock destroyer, and it commonly grows in shade or part sun. This plant is invasive and it's related to carrots. The seedlings look just like carrot seedlings. So if you aren't sure what's sprouting up in your yard, you can look up a photo of the hedge parsley or look up a photo of carrot seedlings. The plants sprout in the winter and then they grow tall and they get beautiful white flowers. But then in late spring and early summer, the flowers turn into burrs that get stuck on your socks, get stuck on your pants, and in animal fur. When they get taller, the plants become kind of prickly and can irritate your skin when you pull them out. So removing them now when they're little seedlings is key to success. If you planted larkspur seeds, be sure you know how to tell them apart because the seedlings look very similar. The hedge parsley seedlings will be kind of hairy, and larkspur seedlings are smooth. The hedge parsley seedling leaves are pointier than the more rounded larkspur leaves. Check out episode 7 and the show notes from episode 7 for some tips for my favorite weeding tools for removing big groups of tiny seedlings. Now is a good time for sheet mulching to make new planting areas or walkways. Sheet mulching is a process of cutting down the existing plants in an area, so that might be turf grass or wild plants and weeds. And then you add a couple of layers of cardboard, or you can use newspaper or butcher paper, something like that. Wet that paper down really well or wet that cardboard down really well. And then you can add compost and mulch on top. I'll have some sheet mulching instructions on my website for you in the show notes. So more details about that. But if you build new planting areas at this time of year, by the time the cardboard starts to decompose and all the formerly existing plants start decomposing, you'll be ready for spring planting. So sheet mulching in the winter will get you ready to be able to plant in the spring. Don't forget to keep watering your plants that you just installed this year, particularly young trees. The newer plants still need regular watering even during the winter to keep them hydrated. If it doesn't rain for 2 or 3 weeks, which is pretty common for us in the winter, go ahead and water the entire landscape. Make sure you check the soil with your finger first. It should feel wet like a wrung out sponge all the time around new plants. So if it's a little bit dry, go ahead and give them some water. Okay, now what's going on with trees and woody plants? Now that the weather is cool and the trees have lost their leaves, it is okay to go ahead and start pruning them. It's a really good time for tree trimming. I'm going to teach a tree pruning class at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center this winter. More information coming up on that later in the episode. Now is a great time for planting trees, shrubs, and roses. So get to it if there's any trees or shrubs that you've been wishing for. Now is a great time for planting. Now is a great time for planting fruit trees, particularly stone fruits and palm fruits. The stone fruits are peaches and plums, and the palm fruits are the ones with cores, like apples and pears. This time of year in particular is time for planting bare root fruit trees. Bare root fruit trees come without soil around their roots. They're usually packaged in plastic bags with sawdust or newspaper surrounding their roots. There's a lot of advantages to planting bare root fruit trees. The trees are smaller when you first plant them than trees that come in containers generally. And that gives you the advantage of planting them. You can shape the tree to be exactly how you want it to be. You can keep it really small so you can harvest the fruit easily. Another advantage of bare root tree planting is that bare root trees tend to have fewer root defects than trees that come in containers. You'll get a younger tree generally as a bare root tree than a tree that comes in a container. And with fruit trees, they don't live very long, particularly peaches and plums. So getting them when they're younger means you will have them for a longer period of time for fruit production. Ordering bare root fruit trees online gives you more options for the best varieties for our area, ensuring that you get varieties that will make fruit based on chill hours. So chill hours it's the number of hours in the wintertime between 32 and 45 degrees. In Austin, in town, we get between 450 and 600 chill hours each winter. Outside of town, we get more chill hours, closer to 600 or 700 chill hours where it's colder outside of town. Basically, after a certain number of chill hours, the trees know that it's springtime, and that's how they know that it's time to bloom and start growing. And the different varieties of fruit trees need different lengths of chill hours in order to break dormancy and start blooming. So if you get a variety that has the appropriate number of chill hours for our area, then you'll be likely to get fruit. If you get a variety that's not appropriate for this area, that needs more chilling hours than what we get here in town, then that tree will never bloom and you will never get fruit. That's a very common problem for us because we live so far south and we have so few chill hours compared to most places in the world. If you get a variety that needs very few chill hours, that maybe is better adapted to, say, South Texas, then it might bloom too early, and then the flowers or tiny fruit could be killed by late freezes. So that's why the chill hours are so important to us. So when you order uh, fruit trees, bare root fruit trees, or you buy a bare root fruit tree from a locally owned nursery, you're going to be more likely to get a variety that is appropriate for our area. So if you live in the city, you want to get varieties that need between 450 to 600 chill hours. If you live outside of Austin a little bit, you'll want to get between 600 and 700 chill hours. If you live further south near San Marcos, for example, you could stick with around 500 chill hours right around there in those varieties. Now, the planting method for a bare root fruit tree is a little bit different from a container tree. So, if you're ordering bare root fruit trees or you went and got some bare root fruit trees, make sure you know the planting method. So, you just have to dig a really wide hole. Then you want that hole to be about the same depth as the root system of the tree as it came to you in the bag. Then you want to make a little mountain in the middle of the hole, and the top of the mountain should be level with the top of the hole. Then you spread the roots of the bare root fruit tree around the sides of the mountain with the trunk on top of the mountain. Sometimes you'll get a bare root fruit tree that has a tap root, which is a long root that's sort of an extension of the trunk. And there will be little hair roots coming off of that tap root. Then you just jam that tap root into the middle of your little mountain and spread the smaller roots out around the mountain sides. Then you just backfill with the soil that you have. And I am going to include some resources in the show notes, including a list of varieties for our chill hour requirements here in Austin. What else is going on with our fruit trees these days? At this time of year, if you have peaches, plums, pears, apples, you'll want to spray them with dormant oil one time on all the trunks and stems when the temperature is forecast to be above freezing for 3 days in a row. Just do the best you can. We spray fruit trees with dormant oil or neem oil in winter to suffocate overwintering pests like aphids, mites, and scale insects. Plus, it also will coat their eggs and it blocks all of their breathing pores. This provides low toxicity pest control before new growth starts in the spring. And neem oil also helps control some fungal issues, so that can be a really good choice. Hi, y'all. Colleen here from ATXGardens.com. If you want personalized help with your landscape, book a consultation with me and we'll walk your yard together. I'll answer all of your questions and we'll create a plan together that feels doable for you. You can also shop my favorite gardening tools and books at ATXGardens.com. Okay, let's get back to the episode. All right, up next, I'm going to tell you a little bit about perennials at this time of the year. Usually by now, we've had our first freeze, and the tops of the warm season perennials have gotten some cold damage. Now, it depends on how hard the freeze was. Sometimes There's just a little bit of cold damage on the ends of the branches and stems, and the rest of the plant still looks alive and maybe even still blooming, and that can be confusing. Should you trim it or should you not? Sometimes we have a really, really hard freeze and the entire top of the plant dies and it looks really bad. And you might think about running out there and cutting stuff down, or maybe you're not sure. Maybe the stems are still alive and just the leaves fell off. It's very confusing. So, this is my guidance to you. All of the perennials that are warm season perennials, where the tops typically die in the winter in Austin, and then the plants grow back again in the spring. Those are the warm season perennials. All of those plants optimally need to be cut down by March 1st. That's generally when they start growing back. Some are later than others, and it's heavily weather dependent. But in general, getting everything cut down by March 1st is a pretty good option. Now, I always tell people, if you are a gardener for wildlife, you have a butterfly garden, that sort of thing, all of the insects and animals use the winter dead material for overwintering. So a lot of the insects they'll pupate in hollow stems. A lot of the little animals will use twigs and dead leaves and stuff like that for shelter in the winter. So if you're a wildlife gardener, leave all of the dead plant material as long as you possibly can. And that will be good for all the insects and animals. A lot of you probably have a lot of perennials to cut down. And February is a short month, literally. There's fewer days in February. There's a lot of bad weather typically in February, where we'll get maybe a winter storm. It's cedar fever season. So a lot of people aren't feeling well. Almost everyone gets sick. It's a lot of cutting down to do in a very short period of time. So at my house, I like to start cutting the perennials down a little bit earlier. I start doing it in January, even though I am a wildlife gardener. There's just no way that I'll be able to get through all of it in February. And so I go ahead and I start cutting down my perennials. And I don't mess around. If there's a light freeze, I don't mess around with just cutting the tops of the plants off, like just the tips that are dead. I just go ahead and I cut down the whole plant wholesale. And I leave a little bit of stem, about this much, sticking up out of the ground so that I can remember that the plant was there. So even if the plant is still blooming, even if it still has leaves on it, I will start cutting down my perennials in January and I leave this much stem sticking out of the ground. If you have fewer perennials and more free time, you can just go and cut just the dead parts off if you want to, but that's really time consuming and tedious. And ultimately, the whole plant is eventually going to need to be cut down. And so I'm talking about the perennials like lantanas, Salvia leucantha, like the mealy blue sages, the majestic sages, the yellow bells, Pride of Barbados. Those are among the most common perennials, stuff like Sexmenia, things like that. So be kind to yourself, be kind to your insect friends. Try to find that balance of timing for yourself for cutting the plants down, cutting down all the perennials. Moving on to the vegetable garden and the herb garden in the winter, there's not a whole lot happening right now with vegetables and herbs. You might be at a point where you can start harvesting your cool season vegetables. If you've planted seedlings in the past few weeks, be sure to thin those seedlings of especially greens, especially root crops, to give them enough space to grow. Remember that you can eat most of the thinnings. Even radish tops are pretty tasty as microgreens when they're small. So that way you don't have to feel bad about thinning. You can eat those little tiny plants. And you just want to make sure, especially with beets and radishes, turnips, all the root vegetables, that you're leaving enough space between the plants so they don't shade each other. And so that way the roots will have room to grow too, and they're not pushing against each other. So take a look at your seed packets, or take a look at a really good book. I've got like Howard Garrett's Texas Vegetable Gardening book on my website. We'll put that in the show notes so you can see how far apart the plants are supposed to be after thinning. Thinning is a really important part of vegetable gardening, even though it's really hard. Same thing with cilantro, maybe dill, fennel, calendulas, anything that you planted from seed. Parsley, that might need to be thinned now. And there's more information about winter vegetable gardening and herb planting in the last episode. Now, coming up, I've got some events happening on January 8th at 10:30. I'll be speaking to the Highland Lakes Birding and Wildflower Society about seed saving from our native plants and trees. I hope you'll join us at the Burnett County AgriLife Extension Center. That's at 607 North Vanderveer Street in Burnett, Texas. Then on January 17th at 9:30 at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, I'll be teaching a class about tree pruning. And that class you have to register for. So if it's available, we'll put that link in the show notes. Then on January 31st at 9:30, again at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, I'll be teaching a class about winter maintenance for native plants, and you'll get to see me actually cut down some of those perennials like I talked about earlier. And if it's available, we'll have a link for you to register for that class in the show notes. So that wraps up today's episode. Thanks so much for joining me. Check out the show notes for links to everything I mentioned. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with fellow Central Texas gardeners. It really helps grow the show. I'm Colleen with ATXGardens.com. See you next time. Thanks for listening to the ATX Gardens Podcast. For show notes, tools, and to book a consultation with me, visit ATXGardens.com. Happy gardening. See you next time.